A little girl once stepped into a strange, gothic family and felt like she truly belonged. Decades later, a new face took on the same role and shattered records across the world. But between those moments, something darker was quietly unfolding. Behind the scenes, childhoods unraveled, families broke in unexpected ways, and sudden fame came with a heavy cost. On screen, they were part of the strangest family in America, but the real stories turned out even stranger. Jenna Ortega.
It was for a commercial, the first year that I started acting.
Jenna Ortega's story began in California's Coachella Valley, and from the moment she watched Dakota Fanning in Man on Fire at 6 years old, something inside her shifted. She told her mother she wanted to become the Puerto Rican version of Fanning, and her mother, who worked long hours as an emergency room nurse, started driving her to Los Angeles 5 days a week. Each trip added up to 6 hours, but Jenna kept going, pulled forward by something she couldn't explain. By the time she turned 18, her resume had already grown from Disney Channel roles like Stuck in the Middle to darker projects like You, along with horror films such as Scream and X. Every role built on the last, slowly shaping the path she was creating. When the offer for Wednesday arrived in 2021, she didn't rush toward it. In fact, she stepped back. She wanted to focus on film and felt she had already spent too much time in television. She turned it down more than once. Then she heard that Tim Burton was attached, and everything paused. Burton had made it clear that if they didn't find the right Wednesday, the show wouldn't move forward. That pressure carried weight. Jenna eventually auditioned over Zoom while filming X, exhausted and covered in fake blood. Somehow, that raw state worked in her favor. Burton saw something in her, a quiet intensity that reminded him of Winona Ryder in Beetlejuice. From that moment, the door opened. Filming for Season 1 began in Bușteni, Romania, in September 2021 and wrapped in March 2022. When the show premiered on November 23, 2022, it quickly became a global success. In its first 5 days, it reached 341 million hours viewed, setting a record for an English-language Netflix series. By the second week, that number climbed to 411 million hours. Within 28 days, around 150 million households had watched, making it one of the few titles to cross 1 billion viewing hours. Jenna, at 20, earned an Emmy nomination, becoming one of the youngest nominees in her category since Patty Duke in 1964. Her dance in Episode 4 spread across the world. She created it herself, drawing inspiration from Susie Sue, Bob Fosse's Rich Man's Frug, Lisa Loring, and footage from 1980s clubs. Later, she revealed she had COVID while filming that scene, saying she woke up feeling like she had been hit by a car. Then, in March 2023, everything shifted again. During a podcast with Dax Shepard, she spoke openly about rewriting lines and described parts of the storyline as confusing. Her honesty came at a difficult time, just before the WGA strike, and the reaction was immediate. Writers from shows like The Bear and BoJack Horseman responded publicly, and criticism spread online. She later acknowledged she could have chosen her words more carefully. Despite that, showrunners Miles Millar and Alfred Goff continued to support her and expanded her role into an executive producer for Season 2. Season 2 grew into the largest production ever filmed in Ireland, spanning County Wicklow and releasing in 2 parts in August and September 2025. New additions included Steve Buscemi, Lady Gaga, and Christopher Lloyd, returning from the original films in a different role. Even before the season finished, Netflix renewed the show for Season 3 in July 2025, adding Eva Green to the cast. At the same time, Jenna's career continued rising. Her net worth reached around $5 million, supported by her work with Dior and her role in Beetlejuice in 2024, which earned $452 million worldwide. Through all of this, she admitted the sudden attention affected her more than she expected. After the show's success, she spoke about feeling overwhelmed and trying to understand the changes in her life. As someone naturally introverted, the global spotlight felt intense. Still, she kept moving forward the same way she always had, from long drives as a child to standing at the center of something global, letting each step quietly lead into the next. Lisa Loring.
Hi, this is Lisa Loring, Wednesday from the Addams Family, the TV series.
Lisa Ann DeCinces was born on February 16, 1958, on Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands, into a Navy family where movement and discipline shaped everyday life. Before she could fully understand what work meant, she was already in front of cameras, modeling at just 3 years old, while other children were still lost in play. Life moved quickly for her, and by the time she was 5.5, she was cast as Wednesday Addams. Producers noticed how closely her look matched Carolyn Jones, who played Morticia, and she had to memorize lines even before she could read. She later described the set as feeling like a real family, supported by Carolyn Jones and John Astin, who gave her a sense of stability in a world much bigger than her age. Between 1964 and 1966, she filmed all 64 episodes, bringing a quiet innocence to Wednesday that made the character unforgettable. When the show ended, partly because converting the detailed black and white sets to color became too expensive, her career began to slow. She appeared briefly in The Pruitts of Southampton, but afterward, opportunities became rare. Years passed with little work. In 1977, a reunion film brought her back as Wednesday Sr., briefly reigniting that earlier recognition before it faded again. Her most stable adult role came later, playing Cricket Montgomery on As the World Turns from 1980 to 1983. Her personal life carried heavy challenges early on. At 15, she married Farrell Fumberg, and in 1974, she gave birth to her daughter Vanessa. That same period brought deep loss when her mother died from chronic alcoholism at just 34. She remarried in 1981 to Doug Stevenson and had another daughter, Marianne, but the marriage lasted only 2 years. In 1987, she married Jerry Butler, and their struggles became public through talk shows as they tried to repair their relationship. She believed his promise to leave adult films, but later discovered he continued, breaking her trust. The emotional strain led her into heroin addiction, and her life became increasingly difficult. In 1991, she found her friend Kelly Van Dyke after Kelly had taken her own life, a moment that deeply affected her. She attempted to follow the same path, but survived. In 1992, she entered rehab and became clean. Afterward, she stepped away from acting, choosing a quieter life working in interior design in Santa Monica. She later admitted feeling disillusioned, though she still hoped to return to acting, even expressing a wish to appear in a Quentin Tarantino film, a chance that never came. On January 28, 2023, she passed away at Providence St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank at the age of 64. Days earlier, she had suffered a major stroke caused by hypertension, worsened by years of smoking. After 3 days on life support, her family made the difficult decision to let her go. Her daughter Vanessa shared that she passed peacefully, with both daughters by her side, holding her hands. With her passing, John Astin became the only surviving main cast member of the original show, still alive at 95, carrying the memory of the young girl who made Wednesday Addams unforgettable. Christina Ricci.
Christina Ricci.
Christina Ricci was born on February 12, 1980, in Santa Monica, California, the youngest of 4 children. And from the beginning, her life carried a strange mix of light and shadow that shaped who she would become. Her father, Ralph, had a temper that filled their home with fear, and she later described him as someone whose frustration often turned into violence. Her mother, Sarah, had once been a model with the Ford agency, moving with a quiet grace that felt completely different from the tension inside their house. At 8 years old, during a school Christmas play, someone in the audience noticed her, and that small moment opened the door to her first film role. Soon after, at 9, she stepped onto the set of Mermaids in 1990, working alongside Cher and Winona Ryder, often hiding in their trailers to escape her tutor and find a sense of comfort. Not long after, she was cast as Wednesday Addams at 10, and the moment she stepped into that black dress, something seemed to click. The adults around her quickly realized she had a rare understanding of scenes. Director Barry Sonnenfeld later recalled that the cast often trusted her instincts more than their own. At one table read, she stood up and argued that Uncle Fester should be the real Fester, not an imposter, and the adults followed her lead. When the film was released, it earned $191,500,000 on a $30 million budget. The sequel, Addams Family Values, arrived in 1993, giving her an even stronger presence. She brought a calm, intense energy to Wednesday, and during filming, she shared her first on-screen kiss with David Krumholtz at 13, later joking she only noticed his peach fuzz. Behind the scenes, Raul Julia's health was declining, though few understood how serious it was. When he passed away on October 24, 1994, at 54, plans for a third film quietly ended. As she grew older, her transition into adult roles wasn't easy. Her agents pushed her towards safer choices, but she felt drawn to deeper, more honest stories. She appeared in The Ice Storm in 1997, followed by Buffalo 66, The Opposite of Sex in 1998, and Sleepy Hollow in 1999. These roles brought critical praise and even a Golden Globe nomination at 18, yet stability still felt distant. At 15, she developed anorexia, later sharing how she covered mirrors just to avoid seeing herself. Her 20s were intense, shaped by a childhood that never truly settled. In October 2013, she married James Hirtigan, but what began as hope turned into something deeply painful. In June 2020, police responded to a domestic call at their home. She later secured a restraining order in January 2021, describing abuse and threats that left her living in fear. The situation forced her into financial strain, even leading her to sell personal belongings to stay stable. Life slowly shifted again. In 2021, she married British hairstylist Mark Hampton, and their daughter Cleopatra was born on December 8 of that same year. She later said it was the first time she experienced real, healthy love. Her career rose again with Yellow Jackets in 2021, earning her an Emmy nomination. She also appeared in Netflix's Wednesday, creating a full-circle moment. In March 2025, she received her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, standing with her family. Her net worth now sits between $8 million and $9 million. But her journey reflects something far greater. The distance she traveled from a childhood filled with fear to a life she finally chose for herself. Ken Weatherwax.
I gave that to Wednesday. All that kid stuff is behind me now.
Ken Weatherwax earned $17,000 for 3 years as Pugsley, yet by the end of his life, it was fans who helped cover the cost of his burial. The path that led there had started long before most people even knew his name. Kenneth Patrick Weatherwax was born on September 29, 1955, in Los Angeles. Surrounded by a family deeply connected to Hollywood, his aunt was Ruby Keeler, a well-known musical star of the 1930s, and she had once been married to Al Jolson. His half-brother played Porky on the original Lassie, while his uncles Frank and Rudd Weatherwax trained and owned the famous Lassie dog. The legacy was there, close enough to touch, yet it never fully opened doors for him. At just 9 years old, he stepped into the role of Pugsley after appearing in a toothpaste commercial. He worked alongside Lisa Loring through all 64 episodes, and for a time, everything felt stable. But when the show ended, the silence that followed hit him hard. He later admitted in 2008 that he struggled deeply with that transition. School became difficult, and he was expelled 6 or 7 times before leaving entirely. By 17, he joined the U.S. Army, searching for direction. After his service, he withdrew everything he had earned from the Addams Family, $17,000 in total, about $5,600 per year, which he later said helped him restart his life. Even then, stability didn't come easily. He spent 2 years moving through jobs without direction before finding steady work as a grip at Universal Studios. That role lasted nearly 20 years, and he once shared that he preferred working behind the camera because it brought him a sense of peace. He never owned a home, instead moving between his mother's house, relationships, and even a rented storage space he jokingly called his shop. When his mother suffered a second stroke in 2002, he stayed with her, becoming her full-time caregiver and stepping further away from public life. On December 7, 2014, he passed away at 59 after a heart attack in West Hills, Los Angeles. His niece shared the news with a simple message, asking people to think of him whenever they heard the show's theme song. But what followed revealed something heavier. His family couldn't afford a proper burial, so friends and fans came together to help. A crowdfunding effort raised the needed support, and in 2017, 3 years after his passing, his remains were finally laid to rest at Valhalla Memorial Park Cemetery in North Hollywood. At his memorial, Lisa Loring stood among those who came, along with Butch Patrick and longtime colleagues from Universal Studios. They gathered to remember a man who had once been part of millions of homes, even if his own life had never carried the same brightness as the screen he appeared on. Jerry Messing.
The third, my dear boy.
Jerry Messing's story starts in a corner of pop culture that many people barely remember, and maybe that is exactly why the journey feels so unusual. He was only 12 when he played Pugsley in Addams Family Reunion in 1998, a direct-to-video sequel that never held the same place in people's memories as the earlier films. For a lot of viewers, it was the kind of movie that vanished the moment it ended. But for Jerry, that small role opened a door. Not long after, he appeared as Gordon Crisp on Freaks and Geeks in 1999 and 2000, bringing a soft, likable presence to a series that would later be treated like television gold. For a brief time, it looked like he was moving towards something steady. Then, just as quietly as he had arrived, he stepped away. In 2003, he left acting behind and moved to Florida to study psychology, almost like someone slipping out of one life and carefully testing another. For years, things stayed calm. Nothing about that silence hinted that his name would one day return in a way no one could have predicted. Then one old photo changed everything. It was just a headshot, simple and harmless, showing him smiling beneath a Trilby hat. Someone posted it on Reddit on October 31, 2013, and from there it took on a life of its own. The internet turned it into the Fedora Guy meme, and it spread everywhere, tied to neckbeard stereotypes and the now famous Tips Fedora joke. What had once been just a photograph became something people repeated, reshaped, and mocked across the web. At first, Jerry didn't know how to feel about it. He later admitted that he wasn't happy about what the image had come to represent, but he also understood there was no stopping it once it escaped into that world. Over time, he chose not to fight it. Instead, he slowly found a way to live with it. By January 2020, he leaned into the strange legacy by starting a YouTube channel called Fedora Productions, a quiet attempt to reclaim something that had traveled far beyond his control. But just as he was trying to build something new from that strange twist of internet fame, life shifted again in a far more serious way. In August 2021, while waiting for his second vaccine dose, he caught COVID. He was 35, living in Tampa, and what started as illness quickly turned into a fight for survival. His oxygen levels dropped so dangerously that doctors had no choice but to place him on a ventilator. Then came 2 weeks in a coma, and when he finally woke up, the world had changed. He found himself partially paralyzed, unable to walk or even move his limbs on his own. It was the kind of moment that splits a life into before and after. Recovery did not arrive quickly. It came through long, painful months of physical therapy, through repetition, frustration, and the slow work of teaching his body how to move again. Every day became a lesson in patience. Every small improvement mattered. While Jerry's story pulled attention because of how dramatic and unexpected it became, other Addams children moved quietly along very different paths. Nicole Fugere, who played Wednesday in the 1998 film, and across 65 episodes of The New Addams Family from 1998 to 1999, eventually left acting altogether and built a life in tech. Jodie Foster had once voiced Pugsley in the 1973 Hanna-Barbera animated series when she was only 10, years before becoming a 2-time Oscar winner. Even Butch Patrick, forever known to many as Eddie Munster, crossed into the Addams world for a moment in 1973 when he played Pugsley in a live-action pilot that mostly disappeared from history. All of those stories moved in different directions, but Jerry Messing's path may be the most unpredictable of them all. It began with a forgotten sequel, passed through a beloved television series, faded into ordinary life, and then returned through a single image that the internet refused to let die. And somewhere between being remembered as Pugsley, becoming a meme, and waking up from a coma to face a body that no longer moved the same way, he kept going. Step by step, piece by piece, he kept trying to rebuild. That may be the most striking part of his story, not the hat, not the joke, not even the strange way fame found him twice. but the fact that after every turn, no matter how bizarre or painful, he kept searching for a way forward. Jimmy Workman.
We put him in a guillotine, we drop him off the roof, we throw him down a flight of stairs.
Jimmy Workman's entry into acting happened by pure chance, and that single moment quietly shaped the direction of his entire life. He was born on October 4, 1980, in Fairfax, Virginia, and growing up, acting was never part of his plan. Then one ordinary day, when he was 10, he went along with his older sister Chanel to her audition for Wednesday Addams. While she focused on her lines, Jimmy wandered around the set, moving freely the way kids do when they think no one is paying attention. But someone was. Director Barry Sonnenfeld and producer Scott Rudin noticed him almost immediately. There was something natural in the way he carried himself. They called him over, asked him to read for Pugsley, and the moment he spoke, the decision was made. He got the role. Chanel didn't land Wednesday. That part went to Christina Ricci, and just like that, a mix of timing and luck changed everything for their family. He went on to appear in both Addams Family films, and for a time, his face became familiar to audiences. He stayed active with smaller television roles, appearing in shows like Matlock and Jake and The Fat Man, and even had a brief, uncredited moment in Black Sheep in 1996 alongside Chris Farley. But the shift came quickly. As he entered his teenage years, his appearance changed. He grew taller, lost the look that had defined Pugsley, and the industry moved on. Roles became harder to find, and by 2005, his final acting credit appeared in a small project called The Biggest Fan. By 2004, he had already begun stepping away, leaving acting behind quietly. That ending opened the door to a different kind of stability. He moved behind the scenes, working in the transportation department on film sets. Over time, he became part of Teamsters Local 399, helping productions run smoothly by moving equipment and supporting cast and crew during long days of filming. His work has included films like Star Trek in 2009, Suburbicon in 2017, and Debt Collectors in 2020. It's a role that keeps the industry moving, even if it rarely receives attention. He keeps his life private, avoids social media, and stays far from the spotlight he once knew. Financially, his life looks very different compared to others in his extended family. His estimated net worth is around $500,000, especially when compared to his half-sister Ariel Winter, born January 28, 1998, whose career on Modern Family brought her a fortune of around $12 million. Both share the same mother, Chrysula, and their paths crossed again during a difficult period. In 2013, when Ariel was 15, Jimmy became involved in a custody dispute, petitioning to become her guardian. He argued that their older sister Chanel was not the right choice. The case became tense and emotional, reopening family wounds under public attention. When the court granted custody to Chanel in May 2014, Jimmy left the courtroom in tears, and the moment left a lasting impact on everyone involved. Even with his private life, there are moments when he steps back into the public eye. At the 2024 Los Angeles Comic-Con, he reunited with Christina Ricci, Angelica Houston, Christopher Lloyd, and Carl Stryken. Fans gathered, remembering the world they once created together. For a brief time, Jimmy returned to that familiar space, sharing stories about Raul Julia, and recalling how kind he had been to the younger cast. Those memories carried warmth, showing how much those early years still meant to him. And when the event ended, he stepped away once more, returning to the quieter side of Hollywood, where the work continues without applause, and where he has found a life that no longer depends on being seen. Some childhood stars fade, some transform, and some fight their way back through the hardest moments life can throw at them. If this story stayed with you, don't forget to like and subscribe, because behind every familiar face, there's always a story you never saw coming.